Hit you with the facts and your brain will stall. Truth in your face, you don't see it all. Ain't no pause, ain't no reset button. We won't back down like a reject button. With a race fist, we will resist and we'll march on till we can get justice. Mama, I've been dying.
Alright, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy C has Motivated Minds. I finally finished the video that I was working on for the Harder They Fall. So what it really is the second half. Because if you remember and if you saw it, the first half was I talked about the movie Posse. So one long video. So I had to chop it up into two parts. So I just finished it. So what I'm gonna show y'all, that's what it's gonna be the second half. As you go through this, what you'll notice, if you've seen the movie or even if you haven't, when you do see it, you'll notice that I left out a few characters. I left out Treacherous Trudy, who was played by Regina King. I talked about Wally Esco a little bit, who's played by Deon Cole, but I also left out a character, Cuffy, which I probably should have put her in, but I did. It was all intentional. I left out Regina King's character, Treacherous Trudy. They believe that she was based off of a person by the name of Gertrude Smith, and not much is really known about her. So I left her out. The character Wally Esco, played by Deon Cole, I mentioned him. I think I mentioned him. But there's not a whole lot known about Wally Esco either. They do know that he was a lawman, much like Bass Reeves. You know, his name is written down in the archives, but it doesn't really go in detail about him. But the person that I really should have covered was Cuffy. And if you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But you know, her real name was Kathy or Cathay Williams, and I left her out because at the time I was working on the video, I didn't really know who she was. You know, I just thought it was a fictional character until I was watching the movie. And there's a scene in the movie where Nat Love, who's played by Jonathan Majors, you know, asked her what's your name, and she said, well, my birth name was Cathay Williams or Kathy Williams, but everybody called me Cuffy. And her story is really interesting because she was the only female Buffalo Soldier, but she disguised herself as a man to become a member, you know, of the I want to say the 10th Cavalry Regiment. She ended up getting wounded, so she deserted. You know, she left, and the reason why she did that was because she didn't want anybody to discover that she was actually a woman. So her story within itself is interesting. I've known about her since around 2000 when I was in recruiting school. We had to do PowerPoint presentations, and mine was the contributions of Black women to the United States Army. So she was one of the people that I found, so I put her in my PowerPoint presentation, and people were really shocked because they had no clue. So anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. You know, it took me a while to do. The movie's been out for a while, and I'm just now finishing the second half. It is your boy, C has Motivated Minds, and I'm out. So on to the Harder They Fall. Of course, this movie's a Western. It stars Idris Elba, Regina King, Lakeith Stanfield, Jonathan Majors, Delroy Lindo, and I mean, I can just go on and on and on. Deon Cole is in this movie too, but you know, it has a whole cast of people. This movie uses real historical figures, but it's a fictional story. So who are the people behind the names? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about. Because not every character in this movie was real. So when I was looking at the cast, I was looking at the names, I counted about 8 people. So let's just run through and let's talk about each one of these people. First up, we got Nat Love, who's played by Jonathan Majors. Nat Love is probably one of the most famous cowboys out of the Wild West. He was born in Davidson County, Tennessee in 1854. He was really good at breaking horses. He eventually, you know, left Tennessee, you know, left the plantation, and he made his way out west. He eventually ended up in the Deadwood, which was in the Dakota Territory. There's all kinds of stories out there, you know, about Nat Love, but he eventually retired from the cowboy lifestyle in 1889. He ended up writing an autobiography in 1907 that's called The Life and Adventures of Nat Love. Next up is my girl, Stagecoach Mary. She was born Mary Fields around 1832 in Hickman County, Tennessee. She was also born into slavery. And after the Civil War, she was emancipated. And, she worked some odd end jobs, but, what she's most known for, before she earned her nickname, she worked in convents around nuns. But they ended up putting her out because, she was known as a hard drinking, foul mouthed, quick shooting individual. One thing that you're gonna find unique about her, if you go see the movie, is that she's played by Zazie Betts, and in the movie she's a young woman, right around 30. But in reality, she didn't actually become a mail carrier, on Stagecoach until she was about 60. So that's just some of that fiction that's in the movie. Next, we have Bill Pickett, who, like Nat Love, was he was a real cowboy, but they got him in the movie portrayed as an outlaw. Bill Pickett was born in Williamson County, Texas, around 1870. What he's really known for, he developed a technique called what they call bulldogging, where he'd be on his horse, and what he'd do is he'd jump off his horse, grab a steer that had gone astray, grab by the horns, and pretty much wrestle it to the ground. Now, they called it bulldogging back then. We know it today, if you watch a rodeo, as steer wrestling. He eventually went on to perform with Buffalo Bill in his Wild West shows, which include also people like Will Rogers. He was also, in a lot of movies along with Buffalo Bill. Then we have Jim Beckworth, who's played by R.J. Seiler. What Jim Beckworth is really known for is for being he was an explorer, he was a mountain man, and he's really famous for being a fur trader. He spent a lot of time, around the Crow Indians. And as a matter of fact, that's who he ended up marrying. Jim Beckworth, he was actually mixed. His father was white. He was also born in slavery around 1798 in Frederick County, Virginia. Jim Beckworth is given credit for discovering what is now known as the Beckworth Pass, which is a low elevation pass through the Sierra Nevada mountain chains. Bass Reeves. I can go on and on about Bass Reeves because he was a lawman, and Bass Reeves was really extraordinary. Bass Reeves was born in Crawford County, Arkansas in 1838. So he was another one that was born into slavery. Bass Reeves was the first deputy U.S. Marshal west of Mississippi, and he spent his time out in Arkansas and Oklahoma. Man, this guy, if you actually start studying and looking up Bass Reeves, he really had a very long career. And he had a record, more than 3,000 arrests, dangerous criminals. And, as history tells it, he shot and killed about 14 of them. So, Bass Reeves was that dude. Let me go on a tangent real quick while I'm talking about Bass Reeves. It is no secret that Hollywood really whitewashed the story of the cowboys, in the Wild West. Because like I said, in the beginning, one out of every three, one out of every four cowboys in the Old West was black. But they also believed that one out of every three cowboys, in the Wild West was Mexican or Hispanic. Because think about it. What was Texas and Arizona and Nevada, California, Oklahoma, and so on and so forth? It's Mexico. So that would only make sense. Hollywood really did, they whitewashed a lot of stories. And I said that to say this. There is a belief that the story of Bass Reeves was changed. And historians think that the story of the Lone Ranger was actually taken from the exploits of Bass Reeves. Is very similar. Um, is it true? I don't know, but that's what a lot of historians believe. Would they ever admit it? Probably not. And one more thing about Bass Reeves that I find that this is absolutely amazing is that he worked, as a deputy marshal in federal service for over 32 years, and in 32 years, Bass Reeves was never wounded, and I think that is just amazing. I mentioned Jim Beckworth earlier, but there was a movie in 1951 called Tomahawk, which was based off of Jim Beckworth, but of course, it was played by a white actor. There's also a movie that starred John Wayne in 1956 called The Searchers. That was based off of a black cowboy by the name of Brett Johnson. So, I started all this off by saying, the black cowboy was written out of history, but Hollywood didn't help either, and they totally took these people and they wrote them out, and they whitewashed the Wild West. And one thing, that I always talk about is image is everything. Image means everything. So I think that when we have movies like this, The Harder They Fall, it's important because, I can take my son, my young one, and even other ones, I can take my nieces, my nephews to the movies and show them a cowboy movie with people who, some of them are real, that look just like them. Now this next guy, some people may or may not have heard of him, but he goes by the name of Rufus Buck. And in the movie, he's played by Idris Elba. Now I don't want to talk too much about Rufus Buck right now because I'm gonna come back to him. Plus, I want to wait till after I watch the movie, just to see, how they portray him in the movie. But one thing about Rufus Buck was he was a full-blooded Ute Indian. And he was the leader of what we call, or what is known as the Rufus Buck Gang. The Rufus Buck Gang, they went on this crime spree of murder, rape, and robbery. They were some bad boys. They were brutal. They were all teenagers, right? And I know what yeah, Idris Elba was playing this guy, but they were young. These kids were about 18, maybe 19 years old. And they terrorized the Indian territory around Arkansas and Oklahoma for about a 2-week period. Hey, this next guy is probably my favorite outlaw. He was born Crawford Goolsby. Y'all might know him as Cherokee Bill. He's played by Lakeith Stansfield in The Harder They Fall. But he was born in San Angelo, Texas around 1876. And he was born to a black father and a Cherokee mother who just happened to be a freedman. Now, his dad was a sergeant in the 10th U.S. Cavalry, better known to y'all as the Buffalo Soldiers. Imagine that, huh? Cherokee Bill started his life as a outlaw at the age of 18 when he shot somebody. But he pretty much ran with the Cook gang, which included the Cook brothers, Jim and Bill Cook, and they terrorized the Indian Territory and what we now know as Oklahoma. And some of this you'll hear me say, the Indian Territory, but Indian Territories back then was known as, all the land west of the Mississippi. Cherokee Bill and Rufus Buck were, they were kind of similar to me, mainly because they were both young, both Indian or Native American. Well, Cherokee Bill was mixed with Cherokee and black, whereas Rufus Buck, was a full-blooded Ute Indian. But again, they were both young. Cherokee Bill did his thing for about 2 years out there before, he was finally captured. Whereas Rufus Buck and Rufus Buck gang, they only did that thing for about 2 or 3 weeks, even though it may have seemed like it was longer. But I'll come back to that later, once I see the movie and see how they're all portrayed. So there it is. That's about 8 characters. Again, when y'all watch this movie, and I hope y'all do go see it, I encourage y'all to go see it. That some of the people in the movie, Nat Love, you got Rufus Buck,
Stagecoach Mary, Bass Reeves, and future who else is there? But they're real. They're real. So just remember, don't take the movie as actual history. And I'm gonna come back and say this maybe in another video. That many of the people in these movies never really met each other. They didn't know each other. Different territories, different eras, different time frames. And I think it's important to note, and I'll probably say this again too, that they have Stagecoach Mary in this movie, and she's about 30 years old. But like I said earlier, when she actually got into the profession that she was in, being the contractor for the mail, she was 60 years old. So that during this time frame, her and Nat Love, they would have never met, and that's based off of where Nat Love operated versus where Stagecoach Mary operated. So anyway, please go see the movie. Hey, this your boy CS Motivated Minds. I'm out.